The phone is fighting against me. So I was saying there was a bunch of nonsense I didn't bother writing down because it wasn't particularly interesting. And then Trump says he wants to enact the biggest tax cut since Reagan. Which I guess is good for Republicans, but Reagan did raise taxes at one point, and the taxes on corporations were actually higher under Reagan than they are now. Trump says he wants to cut regulations, so, I mean, pour all that poison into the rivers. That's fine if it saves you some money, businesses. And who needs workers' rights, right? I mean, he might as well be in favor of the Trans-Pacific Partnership if he's going to be cutting regulations. He wants to raise taxes big league. He's going to cut taxes big league. Which is, again, nonsense. And then Clinton and Trump kind of got into a little spat about whether you should check Clinton's site or Trump's site for the fact-checking. This was the beginning of when they started fighting. Like, just completely being ridiculous and fighting over each other, talking over each other, and the whole debate kind of started spiraling out of control here, but it was a very short beginning, and it really got crazy when we get to cybersecurity. So, lots of fighting. And then Trump was talking about foreign policy for some reason. And he says that Clinton tells you how she's going to fight ISIS on her website. And I bet General Douglas MacArthur wouldn't have liked that very much. Just pointlessly name-dropping World War II generals. And, of course, he doesn't have a plan, so that's why he hasn't told anybody about it. If you're running for president, you should probably share your plans for international peacekeeping if that's part of your platform. Then Trump mumbled on some more about trickle-down economic stuff and repeated lots of things. Then he just babbled for a while and repeated things, and he just kept going on and on and on for entirely too long. Then Clinton got to respond, and she said what's probably going to wind up being the most famous line of tonight, that I feel like by the end of tonight, I'm going to be blamed for everything. And then she sat there smugly. And, of course, Donald Trump chimed in immediately with, why not? I mean, I guess, why not? It's kind of his job, I guess. Then, actually, Trump made a very good point about how terrible things have been Clinton's fault, and the fault of Clinton and people like her. Then he said stuff about the Fed not doing his job is doing political things, more vagaries. And then he went into how he makes so much money. He said that he makes a lot of money. He makes about $694 million, is what I wrote down. It might not be that same number because I wrote it down a couple of minutes later. And he says that, you know, most of our problems are the results of bad deals. Bad deals. They've made a lot of bad deals. Which, I mean, they're bad deals for the United States government, but they're really good deals for the contractors that have representatives in the United States government. Trump didn't say any of that nuanced stuff. And then Hillary Clinton points out that Trump has paid $0 for his income tax on the years that the returns are available, and Trump talked about his income taxes and said that he'll release his income tax returns when Hillary Clinton releases the emails she deleted. Just battles of the buzzwords, really. Then he said stuff about how his tax returns aren't going to be released under the advice of his lawyer because he's in an audit by the IRS. It was actually pointed out to him that it's not illegal to release returns during an audit. And he says his lawyers are advising against it. But he says he'll do it if these conditions are met by the Clinton camp, which is kind of ridiculous. And this also began the kind of commonplace nature of crowd cheering for various statements that were made during the debate, which was a little weird and not really the sort of thing that usually happens at debates. Let's see. This is where Trump said the $650 million debt to Wall Street is nothing compared to what he makes, and that they owe a lot of debt, and that the U.S. owes a lot of debt, and we have a crappy infrastructure, which is true. We do owe a lot of debt, and we do have a crappy infrastructure. And then Clinton was mainly trying to hold the focus on Trump's personal and business issues, and Trump liked to talk about himself a lot, so that worked out kind of for both of them. Because as long as she can try to make the case that Trump is a terrible person, then she's pretty much got it in the bag because Trump is a terrible person, and then she doesn't have to talk about her own terrible policy decisions. And Trump just loves talking about himself. And that works with his crowd. Trump says it's okay to take advantage of the laws of the nation and that people love him. And that we're crappy negotiators. At one point, Trump said that about him paying $0 in taxes, that makes him smart. Because he's super rich and doesn't pay anything for like roads or defense. Then the race issue came up. Clinton said a bunch of stuff about bringing people together and restoring trust and making sure that communities respect police and that police respect communities. And getting the guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them. Which is good. I'm curious to see how she's going to follow through on all that. Trump said law and order. That was his big theme. Law and order. He said the inner cities are dangerous. That blacks and Latinos live in hell. That stop and frisk worked in New York City. And that it brought crime rates down. And that was good. And he wants to take guns away from gangs and protect the inner cities. The moderator pointed out that stop and frisk in New York City was declared unconstitutional because it was racial profiling, against which Trump said, no, it wasn't declared unconstitutional because it was racial profiling. It was declared unconstitutional because it went before an anti-police judge, if such a thing exists, and that the current mayor in New York decided not to pursue it. It's important to point out at this point that fascism's really good at imposing law and order and stopping crime because you don't have any rights. And that's something that came up during the cybersecurity discussion, no matter how pertinent it was to the rest of the discussion. Let's see, Clinton said during the drug war, too many African American and Latinos wound up in prison. She put them there and called them super predators. It was her ideas. She wants to deal with mandatory minimum sentencing. She doesn't have any specific plans about it, but she wants to deal with it. She likes that private prisons have ended at the federal level and wants them to end at the state level. Again, no specific policies. She thinks the terrorist watch list should ban gun buying, and then Trump said he agrees with that sort of thing. And then Clinton said that implicit racial bias is a thing, and we should acknowledge it, which is a pretty safe statement to make and accurate. Trump said, yeah, don't ban those, but you called young black males super predators, and that was a terrible thing to say, and I don't believe that you actually disagree with me on this, is what Trump said to Clinton, which is kind of odd. And then he just defended more about stop and frisk being good, which it was most certainly not. Then Trump made another good point about politicians talking good around elections to minorities and then exploiting them. And that there's a difference between what politicians say and what they do, which is true. And there's a very big difference between what Trump says and what he does. Then the birth certificate got brought up because that's an important issue. Trump says he did a good job. And Clinton says that it was a racist lie that the first black president wasn't an American, which is, again, true. Because his supporters wanted to believe that, because lots of Donald Trump supporters are racist. That's, again, true. This hat is really, really warm. To see more about that, then cybersecurity. Clinton said that there are only two types of cybersecurity attacks. One by private groups looking to steal information to sell, and by state governments, completely ignoring the most important and culturally powerful cyber groups in this sort of instance, like Anonymous, which don't steal corporate secrets to sell, but rather to let them out to the public. And then it kind of spiraled out of control. It was obvious that Clinton and Trump, neither one of them wanted to talk about cybersecurity because neither one of them really knows how things on the internet work. And they know that whatever they say is not going to be popular because they want to control the internet. And the internet demands its freedom. Then Clinton went into how the United States can fuck the shit out of your country for cybersecurity attacks using our superior military power. And then went on to talk about how great land wars is and made a veiled threat against Russia, which, I mean, is kind of not new for this election cycle for either side. All right, hold on just a minute. I'm going to have to stop here and then continue.